Good evening, all. Well, first of all, it's great to be here tonight to be able to speak to you. And I guess my journey with Origin's a little bit different to what some people will be, but it was fascinating for me when I first got introduced to this concept that it was really as a potential merchant partner. And I was fortunate Brian heard me speak at a function and he wanted to be introduced to me after I spoke, and he just said to me about this opportunity that I hadn't really heard anything about. And that was only 2 months ago now. Time flies, but a bit over 2 months ago, that was in March. And the way Brian explained it to me, it really did, it fascinated me what Origin were up to and how I'd never heard of them, because the concept is that we're going to get back to truth on label, and that we're actually looking to put foods on a platform that are healthy for us. So a little bit about my backstory. I'm actually a dairy farmer, and we've been milking cows on our property now, just south of Brisbane. We're only an hour out of town, but since the 1930s. And what we've seen in recent years in the dairy industry, we've actually seen, I guess the way I describe it is the dairy industry is broken beyond repair today. And that's driven by corporate greed. We now see huge corporations are actually not rewarding the farmer with a fair milk price anymore. And that starts at retail level and puts downward pressure on the processing sector, who then pay the dairy farmer whatever's left. So we're seeing a rapidly diminishing amount of money sharing back to farm level. So I think that in Origin, they're actually looking at talking to the grower, the producer, about rewarding a fair amount of money through the entire supply chain. And that's a critical difference today to what we're seeing happening in almost any other sector of retail. We don't see any level of control as the way the money is shared. So Brian initially spoke to me about the opportunity for Real Milk, which is our company, because we cut ties with big milk companies. We've built a milk factory on our farm, and now we process and distribute milk to 300 independent retail outlets, mainly in southeast Queensland. The reality of what we're doing at the moment is quite small scale, and my vision is to be able to do it on a much larger scale than what we are right now, and I'll explain that a little bit later. But the truth is that we are struggling within the independent retail sector, just as the big companies are struggling in amongst the duopoly. And we're seeing downward pressure coming back onto little milk processors that then flows back to the farmer as well. So I looked at the opportunity within Origin to become a potential merchant partner. And that's something we're looking at doing next year. I've applied to be a merchant partner. We're somewhere in the queue. And until refrigeration's available, obviously, we won't see milk on the platform. But that'll happen probably sometime next year. It didn't take me long to see the opportunity beyond merchant partner for me. Brian got me to come into a meeting. My first meeting, I was probably really fortunate to go to my first meeting in Brisbane, and it was a Super Saturday. And Sally Ann Ferguson was one of the presenters that day, and also Andre Davids. And I didn't know who Sally Ann was before that day. So it didn't mean much to me that she was the COO of Origin and one of the founders, because I hadn't met her before and I didn't know much about her background. But to see the philosophy, and I don't know about you guys, but every time I watch that 12-minute company overview, I just get goosebumps. I mean, I reckon I could just watch that on a loop all day if I wasn't feeling real well, and it'd pick me up. But the philosophy of what Origin is about is what really got me excited. And I had seen the clip before that day, but I just remember sitting there watching that clip in the Super Saturday thinking, oh my God, how exciting would it be to be involved with a company like this? A company that's applying morals and ethics in today's world. And so I was excited until I started to see the numbers, and then I kind of thought, oh, I don't know, this is just not something I've got time to do. But I love the philosophy, happy to talk to you guys. And I said to Sally Ann and Andre at the end of the day, I stayed right till the end. Brian and I were the last ones getting kicked out the door, but I wanted to talk to them before I left. And I just said, love what you're doing, but I'm not going to have time for this. But, you know, we'll talk about For Real Milk becoming a merchant partner. And Sally Ann was around for a couple more days. I knew that Andre was presenting down the Gold Coast a couple of days later. So I invited Sally Ann to our farm while she was in Brisbane. I knew she'd be pressed for time, but she said she did actually have a bit of time on the Sunday, but she didn't have a vehicle. And so I just said, well, you know what? I can drive into Brisbane and pick you up and bring you to the farm. And we actually had 20 minutes on the farm, but I had 3 hours in the car with her driving to and from Brisbane, which was a great opportunity. Because one of the things beyond the philosophy, which is actually a lot of, I guess, the other founding partner, David Nomchong's, you know, it's his philosophy that he built initially. For me to see the founders of a company sharing that philosophy and that vision tells me a lot about the company. I mean, it's built on that level of principle. So I was really keen just to have that time with Sally Ann and talk to her one-on-one and get a really good insight into the bigger picture of the business. Not a lot of people probably get that opportunity, but within a day of me saying, I don't have time for this, I was already trying to figure out, well, how do I become a platinum advocate? Because that's where you need to be. I mean, if you're serious about this, that's where I wanted to start. And I did. A couple of days later, I just figured out, how do I make that happen? And we did. So I'm really excited about what the business opportunity is at every level. At every level. I mean, even for customers, how could you not be excited about being a customer that can support a business with these principles and actually have, you know, truth on label like we now see it? Like I've learned some things in the recent weeks that I'm astonished about. You know, honey, that we're selling honey in Australia that's 35% honey and calling it honey. Now, a lot of people wouldn't be aware of that still today. I'm able to share a lot of knowledge when it comes to dairy industry about things I've learned in recent times. And, you know, it saddens me that we don't teach kids stuff at school. It's, you know, the knowledge is available, but the internet's a bit of a minefield. You know, it's really hard to find, well, it's not hard to find anything. It's really easy to find everything. But knowing what's true and what's not is the tricky bit. And when it comes to dairy products, you know, we've been doing tours on our robotic dairy now for the last 5 years. We see about 20,000 visitors a year. So hopefully we're having a little bit of an impact and sharing the truth with people. But even today, I did a tour this morning. We had a busload of old fellas from Toowoomba. So they were all retired. They would have been in their 60s and 70s. And half of them had been for a tour already, and the other half were new to our farm. One of the guys who had been for a tour, he said to me, well, you know, after hearing you last time, you definitely converted me, and I was going to make sure that I bought full cream milk from now on. But he said, but I got your full cream unhomogenized milk, and I gave it to my grandkid, and the next thing my daughter was getting mad at me because that stuff's not safe for kids. So here in Australia, we don't even know the difference between pasteurisation and homogenisation. His daughter, who was in her 30s, thought that unhomogenised milk was unsafe. Homogenisation of our milk is not a requirement of law in Australia, never has been, probably never will be, and we don't even know what it is anyway. And I ask all our visitors now, if I explain to you that homogenisation is when we mix the cream through the milk, does that sound fair? How about you guys? Does that sound about right? What you do is you get a bottle of milk and you do this, that mixes cream through the milk. Homogenisation destroys the entire structure of the milk unnecessarily. Homogenisation is when we are smashing all of the milk through tiny tubes or filters with effectively a sledgehammer. Now, they used to homogenise milk back in the 70s at 2,000 PSI pressure. Today, the big companies are homogenising milk at 6,500 PSI pressure. And my logical brain tells me that means that all of those tiny little fragments are now 1/3 the size they used to be. because we've cranked the pressure to 3 times as high. Homogenisation is not required by law. Pasteurisation is required by law, and pasteurisation is when we heat the milk to 72 degrees, hold it at temperature for 15 seconds and snap chill it. That's the legal requirement. Again, because we have lots of visitors come to our farm, and lots of our visitors used to work in milk factories, and they've told me, oh, well, our big company heats milk to 85 degrees and holds it for a minute. Unnecessary extra processing damage. Why would we do that? To add shelf life to our fresh food. So our little company does minimal damage. We heat it to 72. We hold it for 15 seconds. We don't homogenise a single litre of milk on our farm. And the incredible side benefit of this is that we're getting people telling us they're not getting sick from lactose intolerance by consuming for real milk. They're getting sick on a lot of big company milk. A lot of my learning in this area was on the back of my own kids having a lactose problem and being told they were dairy intolerant or lactose intolerant. And a lot of my immediate family and close friends had had the same issues. So what we're seeing happening now in recent times is an increasing level of intolerance and allergies to our food. And I do not believe that's because the human body changed in one generation. It's actually what we're doing to our food. It's the processing damage that we're doing to our food. It's not just about additives and preservatives, because you could have a fresh milk product that's just been completely destroyed and not add anything to it, and our body doesn't recognise it. So the way the human body digests fresh milk, as an example, the fat globule is too big to get into our bloodstream. Our bloodstream has a natural filtration process, and the fat globule goes through to our intestine, and we extract the enzymes, we extract the nutrients that the fat globule passes through. When we destroy that fat globule, it gets smashed into tiny little sharp splinters by homogenising it. The protein chains get destroyed. They're now getting into our bloodstream instead of getting through to our digestive system, creating an autoimmune response that we've all been conveniently told is lactose intolerance in a free country like Australia. So we're being misled by bad science. The science knows this isn't true. There's research done that will counter all of those arguments about our food allergies, but it's driven by big business and food processing companies, and they don't really want these truths to be known. So it was interesting. Last week I actually got to speak at the Small Business Summit down the Gold Coast at Southern Cross University. And a lot of people were fascinated with some of these things I was sharing. And pretty quickly, 3 or 4 people said to me, well, we need to do some research on this in the university. And then that led to another, I was sitting next to a bloke one day, and he said, you need to meet my daughter who works in Sydney, and can you go to Sydney and speak at a conference that's coming up next month, because this information needs to be heard. So what I'm talking about right now is anecdotal evidence. Just like I tell all of our visitors who come for a tour to the farm, I'm not qualified to give you medical advice. I'm talking about anecdotal evidence. But anecdotal evidence is not placebo effect. This is people's very real life experience. You know, when we get feedback from mums and dads with 2-year-old kids who are getting sick as soon as they try a certain milk or a certain dairy product, 2-year-old kids are not reading labels. They're actually getting real-time feedback in their body. We even now hear that people tell us about their cats and dogs who are drinking for real milk, but if they pour dollar milk into the bowl, the pets won't drink it.
Wow.
You can't fool animals.
No.
It's like the old argument, put some butter and margarine on a table and see which one the ants go for. Ants will not eat margarine, they know it's not food. So a lot of this information, you know, we're having to relearn. We kind of got it wrong for a long time. We saw a lot of research done in the 50s and 60s, and certain sectors of community drove their findings in the direction they wanted. And heart disease has been a classic example, and cholesterol. You know, what we know about cholesterol today was based on bad science by a fellow called Ansel Keys in the USA. And he famously did what was known as the 7-country study. 7-country study was done after World War II. It was actually a 22-country study. And 15 countries didn't match the research that he wanted. So he scrapped those 15 and he kept the 7 that backed his theory. He then took his findings to the US Senate or Congress, and they developed and designed what we now know today as our modern food pyramid on the basis of a corrupted database. So then we thought, after seeing all of that research, that grains and sugars are okay and fats are bad. And we started in 1980 when that got passed through Congress. We saw globally fats being eliminated from our diet. We had this low-fat craze and up popped Weight Watchers, and everyone started counting everything they were eating. And that was the start of a spiralling out of control into the obesity epidemic where we are today. Today we actually have kids not even 10 years old getting type 2 diabetes, not type 1 diabetes. Type 2 diabetes is what we inflict on ourselves with our own choices. We're seeing for the first time in 6,000 years of documented human history, non-alcoholic fatty liver disease in kids had never been diagnosed before. This is what we do to ourselves. But fortunately, we've got this really big business called pharmaceuticals that's going to fix our problems because we can make ourselves sick and then just take a tablet to fix it. So their recommendation is to keep on living your unhealthy lifestyle, but here's your medication. Food really is medicine, real food, real food. The stuff that we're destroying and repackaging, just because we put a label back on something after we've destroyed it doesn't turn it back into food again. Not food that our body recognises. And I really don't care when you read a nutritional panel on a product like Long Life milk is a perfect example. Long Life milk is no life milk. Long Life milk has been completely destroyed. It's been ultra heat treated. It's been homogenised without exception. And that stuff's not available to our body. Whatever that nutritional panel says is not available to our body. You'd be better off drinking water. It's probably safer. So we've got to stop relying on chemical concoctions to get us well again when we made ourselves sick. Not so long ago, my 9-year-old niece got diagnosed with type 1 diabetes, and she's not a severe case, but type 1 is different to type 2, obviously. And one of the first things she was told, a 9-year-old girl, when she was getting the treatment she needed, the nurse let her know in a private hospital that here's some magic medicine so you'll be able to eat all the lollies you want. You just need to take this medicine. Insulin. This is our medical system in the private sector in Australia. Fortunately, my niece has very intelligent parents who say, no, thank you very much. We're going to make some healthy choices. They already eat healthy. Type 1 diabetes is manageable to a point. You don't want to just load up on as much sugar as you can and then just take more insulin to fix the problem. You want to make healthy choices. We really don't want to be getting sick in the near future in Australia because our health system's collapsing now. So when we hear all the statistics like our kids are going to be the first generation that don't live as long as their parents, how frightening is that? The really exciting thing is for the people who don't want to be a part of that trend, we don't have to be. We have the knowledge to have our kids eat healthy. We have the knowledge for ourselves to get healthy again if we've run off the rails a bit, as I do at times. We don't have to be a part of that dysfunctional trend. But a lot of people will, sadly, because a lot of people are not really open to finding solutions to the problems we're creating. So I think that, you know, it's a really amazing time that Inner Origin has arrived now at this point. I mean, for me, I'm not even sure if I found Inner Origin. I think Inner Origin found me. Somehow these things have a way of happening. And the philosophy itself it just resonated so strongly with me because I realised I've kind of been saying all of that stuff for 5 years now to all the visitors we get on our farm. I just feel the same way about the philosophy as what we see in Inner Origin. And the other thing I really love about the association with Inner Origin is there's a real energy of the people who are being attracted towards this opportunity. And one of the things in our Perth leadership, they said a couple of weeks ago, that we have to be okay with not everybody's going to want to come in. We have to allow people to either select or deselect us and Inner Origin. You're going to love the ones that select you and want to be a part of it, and you're going to thank the ones that deselect. They're just on a different vibration, and that's got to be okay with us. If they can't see this opportunity, if it doesn't resonate with them and who they are, then that's fine. We're really just looking for people who get it, people who want to be a part of this. And I do believe this is going to be a revolution. This is going to be massive. It's going to be a game changer. Right now, it's not going to be the game changer that will be in 10 years' time, 20 years' time. Our failing health is going to drive people towards this in the future, whether they like it or not. I've recently done the Trio Detox. And I guess sometimes you do things that you know that they're good for you and you don't really like it, but you do it anyway. That's like that green sludge that you drink at night, you know, in the Trio Detox. You know it's going to be good for you, so you just drink it anyway. It's only 21 days. That's all you've got to do it. And I'm going to do a testimonial on my experience with the Trio, but it's hard to explain. I need to do it soon before I forget, but it's really hard for me to describe the difference it made in me. And I've battled with depression on and off since 2010. And I've had a little bit of it again recently. When I did the detox, I kind of thought I was expecting some physical, negative physical impacts, but I didn't have any. It was actually mentally. And I got to day 4, 5 and 6 and it felt like full-blown depression for me. And at that point I was just thinking, is this just depression again? I wasn't really thinking it was Trio. But what happened beyond that is I just started to feel better and better and better and better. And for the last month I've kind of been just on this ridiculous high. But there's a combination of things because I'm also counting 44 days sober. So I decided before I did the detox, I think I need to stop drinking. I don't know if I'll start again or not. But I also, as I was starting to feel better, 17 days into the detox, and we were over in Perth at leadership and I was actually doing the detox while I was travelling. And I'd had 3 hours sleep, landed in Perth in the middle of the night, woke up the next morning, and I just, for some reason, thought, I'm going to start doing some push-ups. I don't know why. But I remember this thing, there was a 22 push-up challenge that happened last year and it went viral on Facebook and I wasn't feeling real well at the time and I didn't do it. But I thought, I'm going to do 22 push-up challenge of my own, except I'm going to add a push-up every day. And I'm just going to keep doing it until I can't keep doing it. Well, I'm up to day 18, I think. But then when I got to 30 push-ups, I thought, well, this is too easy, so I'll do another 30 tonight, which I did. And the next day I thought, well, that was too easy, so I did 31, 31 and 31. And so then, I just do 3 times a day now. And I got up to 37, but I miscounted, I did 38. So I thought, oh, well, I'll just do 38 3 times. And then when I did 38, I thought, well, why don't I skip 39 and go straight to 40 tomorrow? So then I did 3 40s today. I will do 40 when I get home. So like for the first time since my 20s, I'm doing 100 push-ups a day.
I think you should do it now.
I probably could. But you might see me.
Show us those guns.
I haven't got guns yet, but I'm losing this, which is good. I'm starting to have to pull my pants up.
That's cool.
But so it's just amazing, like it's always hard to connect exactly what the impact of something. There's other things going on in your life, and was that all the Trio Detox, and what was there other things? But I think for me, and being very aware of my mental health and physically, I know when I'm not eating well, it affects my energy, it affects my brain function. I get hazy. You know, you sort of get this fog haze happening and you don't think with clarity. And I just think that understanding the impact of gut health to mental function, you know, when you look today at the level of animosity that we see in the young ones, and road rage is a classic example, you know, just never used to see that when I was young. Well, I think that's transitioning that way because of what we're eating. It's not even about drugs. We hear all these horror stories about drugs these days. Most people aren't on ice. Some people do, and that's bad stuff. But I think it's mainly just our poor diet that's affecting our level of sanity almost. So that's, for me, that's a bit of a cross-section of all of the areas that's led me to this and what I see the opportunity as. The really big picture for me, and as a milk producer and processor, you know, I do understand and respect that this is a national platform. And I'm just a little player in southeast Queensland right now. But my vision when we started processing milk 4 years ago was to save the Australian dairy industry one farm at a time. That's only a little ask. There's 6,000 farms in Australia, dairy farms. But my vision is to rebuild a cooperative network of satellite processing facilities in multiple locations in multiple states. Instead of saying, let's just have this one massive processing facility and send all the milk to Victoria and then back out, which is where we're heading right now. People don't know that, but that's where we're heading. We can actually have multiple processing facilities where local can support local on a nationwide scale. And Scenic Rim for real milk will be available to Brisbane, but maybe the Hunter Valley for real milk will be available to Sydney, and Gippsland for real milk in Melbourne, and Margaret River for real milk in Perth, Florio Peninsula to Adelaide. But we can have multiple processing facilities all around Australia. And I just think it's critical for people to understand and respect what farmers do, because last time I checked, 100% of Australians eat food. 100%. The farming community comprises about 1% of Australians. So we're doing a fair bit of good work for the people of Australia. We actually grow enough food to feed 80 million people. There's only 24 million in Australia. So the solution long-term for us is to look at export opportunities. But I think Origin is going to help reinvigorate rural and regional Australia. And there's probably nothing that I'm more passionate about than rebuilding communities, because we're seeing our country towns just die. They're dying out. The opportunities are evaporating. And we've got to be able to get people back into those areas. And that's our farming communities, the producers of the food. The best way to do that is to return profitability to agriculture. And we're not seeing that come from big business today. Big business will not be the solution. We are seeing the ugly side of capitalism. It's not meant to operate the way it is now. But when you have massive industries where you no longer see the triggers of supply and demand at play, then you know capitalism has failed. And there's got to be a change. There's got to be a massive change. I don't think we can fix the broken parts of the system, but what we can do is gravitate away from them towards a new system that's going to work. And that's what we see here within Origin. We're going to see a completely different model that people can support, knowing that it'll rebuild grassroots as well as give them quality of food in the future. So I just see it as massive win-win-win. That's what this is. It's winning at every level, every sector of the supply chain, from the consumer back to the producer. And I think it's going to be exciting times ahead the next few years, that's for sure. Anyway, thanks guys. Really appreciate it. You can thank me.
I'd like to thank you.
Appreciate it, Brian.
Pleasure hearing your story the first day back in early March.
Awesome.
And it's been a pleasure knowing you ever since. It's a pleasure hearing your story once again back.
Likewise. I'm glad you saw me that day, because, it would have been easy to miss.
Yeah. Well, I don't mind. But I'd love to say to people as well is to support local for waste time.
Yes.
And you're the resource.
Yeah, no, it's critical. Appreciate it. Thanks, Brian. Good stuff. Cheers.
Awesome.